Your pulse races as you desperately stack one argument on another, watching their eyes narrow with each word. The more passionately you speak, the more their arms fold tighter across their chest. You're not just failing to convince them, you're pushing them further away. Remember that sinking feeling? The realization that everything you're saying is making things worse? The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one with compelling arguments, but the one who knows exactly which question to ask, then has the discipline to remain silent. Think about who changed your mind about something important. Was it someone who bombarded you with facts, or someone who asked one perfect question that you couldn't stop thinking about? In ancient Athens, the philosopher Socrates stood before 500 hostile jurors. Instead of delivering grand speeches to save his life, he simply asked questions, then waited in strategic silence as his accusers' certainties crumbled under their contradictions. They sentenced him to death, not for what he said, but for the devastating power of what he didn't say. What if the master key to influencing others isn't talking brilliantly, but creating the perfect space where people convince themselves? And what if mastering this forgotten art could transform every important conversation in your life, starting today? The voice that changes minds is never yours. It's the one others discover in the silence after your perfect question. Our culture worships verbal agility. We celebrate the quick comeback, the perfect retort, the devastating one-liner. We've been conditioned to believe that intellectual superiority is demonstrated through immediate, eloquent response. But this belief is a strategic miscalculation of the highest order. What if everything we've been taught about intellectual dominance was precisely backward? What if the compulsion to speak quickly is the mark of a mind that lacks true strategic depth? Most people believe fast thinking equals deep thinking. The truth hides in plain sight. The masters of mental warfare, from Socrates to Sun Tzu, from chess grandmasters to legendary negotiators, all understand that silence is not the absence of strategy, but strategy's most potent form. The greatest power play isn't speaking first. It's making the other person speak until they reveal everything you need to know. The space between words creates understanding. But to truly understand why this works, we must look to the ancient world, where Socrates changed history with nothing but questions and the power of strategic silence. This strategic approach to silence was perfected by Socrates, the Athenian philosopher, who developed a method so powerful it still bears his name. 2,400 years later, Socrates recognized that humans possess an irresistible urge to fill silence with sound, to state opinions before fully forming them, to reveal their mental position before securing it. He transformed this psychological tendency into a weapon of intellectual combat. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Socrates never wrote a word. His entire philosophical legacy came through asking questions, then waiting in silence. This method forced others to articulate their thoughts, exposing contradictions they couldn't see. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. This reveals a profound truth. The quality of your questions determines the quality of your understanding. By formulating the right question and allowing space for reflection, you're already halfway to clarity. Sun Tzu understood this principle from the battlefield. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Silence is how you come to know. Both Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, reinforced this. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. The strategic advantage goes to those who collect information rather than distribute it. But far from being ancient history, this wisdom becomes even more powerful in our hyper-connected world, where everyone is desperate to be heard and few remember how to truly listen. In today's hyper-connected world, this ancient wisdom becomes even more valuable. We live in an era of reactive communication, where the average person interrupts within just 8 seconds of their partner speaking about something emotional. How much of your mental energy is wasted preparing responses instead of truly hearing what's being said? A landmark study from the Gottman Institute, The Mathematics of Marriage. Just 5 minutes of active listening can transform your relationship. Science proves it. What saves love isn't passion, it's presence. Looking closer, we see how powerful this approach is. Look at our digital communication. The person who responds immediately to every text Every message, every comment reveals a profound lack of power. They show themselves to be at the beck and call of others' emotional agendas rather than masters of their own. When was the last time you noticed that the most emotionally intelligent person in your life was often the one who listened most but spoke least? How differently might your partner perceive you if you stopped filling every silence with the sound of your voice? Are you willing to risk the temporary discomfort of silence for the profound reward of true connection? The fear of not being heard, paradoxically, leads us to speak so much that we ensure no genuine hearing ever takes place. We desperately try to connect through constant expression, never realizing that connection flourishes in the soil of receptive silence. And when we examine the science behind effective relationships, the data becomes even more compelling, revealing a counterintuitive truth that most will never discover. Consider the research on successful couples therapy techniques. In the most effective interventions, therapists train partners not in persuasive speaking, but in strategic listening. According to Dr. John Gottman's research, successful couples maintain at least 5 positive interactions for every negative one. Dr. John Gottman's research has identified defensiveness as one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that predict relationship failure. His studies show that couples who remain together long-term engage in what he calls turning toward, rather than away from their partner's bids for connection, creating a ratio of at least 5 positive interactions for every negative one. The 5-to-1 ratio that separates lasting love from divorce. This pattern appears consistently across decades of relationship research. This isn't just theoretical. According to Psychology Today, the Gottman method focuses on developing the skills necessary for partners to maintain fondness and admiration, turn toward each other to meet needs, and effectively manage conflict through attentive listening rather than defensive reactions. The void you feel isn't from a lack of expression, it's from a surplus of it. When will you stop drowning your relationships in words? The neuroscience confirms what relationship experts have long observed. Silence activates the brain's default mode network, where empathy and emotional processing occur. When we jump to respond, we shut down the parts of our brain responsible for connection. The space between words creates understanding. The data reveals what successful couples know intuitively. Relationships deepen in the spaces between words, not in the flood of reactions. You've likely experienced both sides of this dynamic, but now comes the moment of truth. Which path will you choose going forward? How long will you continue playing conversational games that leave you feeling disconnected? How many more arguments will you win at the cost of actually being understood? Ask yourself honestly, are you speaking to build a connection or merely to calm your own anxiety about the silence? What relationships could transform if you stopped filling every pause with defensive words? Imagine being known as the one who truly understands others. Imagine walking into every difficult conversation as the most emotionally present person in the room, not because of what you say, but precisely because of what you don't. Picture the profound impact of being the one person who isn't rushing to fill the silence, who isn't desperately seeking to be right. This transformation isn't about becoming silent, it's about becoming strategic. It's about recognizing that in the economy of attention, you become wealthy by giving it fully, not by demanding it constantly. The fear of silence, that primal urge to fill the void with sound, is the very thing you must master to create the connection you truly desire. Let me show you exactly how to make this shift with 3 practical principles anyone can implement immediately. You now stand at a crossroads where theory becomes practice, because understanding silence as strategy is one thing, choosing to live it in your next conversation is another. So let's break it down into 2 radically different approaches you've probably already lived, but never fully seen side by side. Consider 2 approaches to relationships. Approach 1, defensive communication. When you enter conversations determined to make your point, you likely interrupt your partner, counter every concern immediately, and leave feeling you've won through verbal dominance. According to Gottman's research, this defensive communication style is one of the strongest predictors of relationship failure. Despite your perfect arguments, meaningful intimacy remains elusive. Defensive communication is one of the strongest predictors of relationship failure. This pattern appears so consistently in failing relationships that researchers call it a reliable warning sign, the #1 communication pattern destroying your connection. A Approach 2. Strategic listening. In contrast, observe what happens when you approach differently, listening first, allowing others to fully express themselves before responding. Research from the Gottman Institute shows that couples who practice this approach experience remarkable improvements. Gottman method. Couples therapy has been shown to improve marital adjustment and couples intimacy in controlled studies. The data is compelling and consistent across multiple studies. This approach is supported by decades of relationship research. Here are 3 principles to master this ancient art, arranged from simplest to most advanced. Wisdom begins in silence. Lesson 1. The 5-second rule. Breathe and count to 5 before responding to any statement, question, or concern. This small gap prevents reactive thinking and signals true presence. Here's what it looks like. Your partner says something triggering about finances. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you take a breath and silently count to 5 while maintaining eye contact. This brief pause often causes your partner to elaborate further, revealing the underlying concern. Your silence might initially be misinterpreted as disagreement or disinterest. If necessary, add a brief acknowledgement like, "I'm taking this in," during your pause to signal engagement. The 5-second rule helps create space for more thoughtful responses by encouraging a brief period of reflection before speaking. This practice can help reduce reactive communication patterns. Gottman's research identified that 69% of relationship problems are perpetual and based on personality differences. Within 3 to 4 conversations, you'll notice a significant reduction in defensive reactions based on Gottman's research on emotional flooding, and a significant increase in the depth of what others share with you. Questions conquer more than assertions ever will. Lesson 2. The question transformation technique. For every statement you want to make, transform it into a question instead. Don't say, "You always do this." Ask, "What led to this situation from your perspective?" When you feel the urge to say, "You never listened to me," pause and transform it to, "What prevents us from understanding each other in moments like this?" This shifts from accusation to mutual exploration. Crafting genuine questions rather than disguised statements takes practice. Avoid questions that begin with, "Don't you think?" or "Wouldn't you agree?" as these are statements in disguise. Within 2 to 3 weeks of consistent practice, conversations that previously escalated into arguments will instead lead to mutual insights about underlying needs. Based on Gottman's research on communication patterns, this approach helps couples develop healthier conflict management skills. The first person to speak reveals their position. The second person decides the battlefield. Lesson 3. The strategic vulnerability sequence. By understanding someone's needs, fears, and desires before revealing your own, you create space for genuine connection rather than defensive positioning. In difficult conversations, focus exclusively on understanding their perspective first. Ask follow-up questions that deepen rather than change the subject. Only after they feel fully understood should you share your perspective, and when you do, connect it to something they've shared. The fear is that if you don't state your position first, your needs won't be considered. Remember that understanding someone doesn't mean agreeing with them. It creates the psychological safety necessary for them to consider your perspective. This advanced technique requires consistent practice, but transforms your most challenging relationships. When mastered, research suggests you'll find others becoming significantly more receptive to your ideas and needs, with couples reporting improved emotional connection. The progression is clear. Start with the 5-second rule in everyday interactions. Once comfortable, add the question transformation technique. Finally, implement the strategic vulnerability sequence in your most important relationships. What you've just learned isn't just a communication strategy. It's the foundation of all meaningful human connection. Return to that moment when you felt disconnected despite your stream of words. See it now through new eyes. Recognize that your perceived failure to connect wasn't from lacking the right words. It was from playing the wrong game entirely. The game isn't about speaking. It's about seeing. It's about knowing. It's about strategic patience. Socrates was so threatening to the power structures of Athens that they executed him, not because he made brilliant arguments, but because his questions, followed by silence, forced others to confront the contradictions in their thinking. The unexamined life is not worth living. From this moment forward, you are no longer the responder. You are the observer. You are no longer the performer. You are the audience. You are no longer the reactive mind. You are the strategic silence into which others pour their weaknesses, contradictions, and ultimately, their deepest truths. The Socratic paradox becomes your power. Those who know do not speak to prove they know. They question to reveal what others don't know they don't know. Now observe. The greatest minds in relationship building share one common trait. They reveal nothing while prompting others to reveal everything. They turn conversation itself into connection. Most people speak to be understood. The strategist listens to understand. Most people react. The strategist responds. The space between words creates understanding. What facades might fall away in your relationships if you became more comfortable with silence than with sound? Which path will you choose? You've just discovered the ancient wisdom that most people will never learn. The next time someone tries to draw you into reactive speech, remember, your power lies not in how quickly you respond, but in how deeply you observe. Comment strategic silence below if you're ready to transform your relationships through the power of listening first. And subscribe for more timeless wisdom made practical for today's world. But more importantly, try saying less the next time you're conversing with someone you care about. Much less. And watch what happens to your relationship. In silence, we don't find emptiness. We find everything that matters.